Welcome, brave adventurers, to a journey into a game that was supposed to die a long time ago, but somehow crawled its way back to life. Much like me trying to get out of bed after one too many ales. Now, you might be thinking, a dead MMO? Seriously? Why not spend your time in one of the dozens of shiny new and flavor of the month MMOs that every streamer and their nan are playing? Well, I could, but what's the fun in that? In a world full of loot boxes, battle passes, and games being designed to gently but firmly shake every last coin from your pockets, sometimes it's nice to escape to a place where none of that really matters. And if you're anything like me, there's something deeply fascinating about a game that wasn't supposed to survive its official shutdown. That's right, Warhammer Online officially shut down in 2013. EA pulled the plug, Mythic Entertainment walked away, and the game should have faded into obscurity. But here we are, in 2024, and Return of Reckoning, the fan-driven private server, is alive and kicking. Let's back up a bit for those who may not have been around in 2008. Warhammer Online was one of the many MMOs vying for that ever-elusive crown of the World of Warcraft killer, a title that, in hindsight, feels more like a curse than a promise. As history shows us, being a WoW killer usually means you die, while World of Warcraft just keeps printing money. Age of Reckoning was a game set in the dark, gritty world of Warhammer Fantasy, a universe filled with grumpy dwarves, chaotic demons, and some of the nastiest orcs you've ever seen. It was all about PvP, or more accurately, RVR, Realm vs. Realm, where massive battles between factions played out in both instanced arenas and open world zones. The focus was on capturing points, holding territory, and making sure the other faction had a thoroughly miserable time. So what happened? Well, Warhammer Online ran for about 5 years before the server shut down. The player base dwindled, the updates slowed, and eventually it was sent to the great MMO graveyard in the sky, where so many other promising games of that era also reside. But the thing is, Warhammer Online didn't stay dead. Thanks to a group of dedicated fans, Return of Reckoning was born, a fan-run private server that's been up and running since 2014. No microtransactions, no cash shop nonsense, just pure old-school MMO goodness with a dash of nostalgia and a whole lot of community love. This is my first impression overview of the game after returning since the OG launch week, as my graphics card at the time just didn't cut it. As with any MMO, you'll start with a character creation screen. A moment that, for many, will be filled with the internal struggle of deciding which faction to join. The wrong choice, order or destruction. If you've ever played a Warhammer game, the choice is pretty straightforward. Do you want to be a shining beacon of civilization, fighting off the forces of darkness? Or would you rather throw your lot in with the nastiest, most chaotic beings in the world and cause as much havoc as possible? Personally, I went with destruction because, let's be honest, in a game where I can be a goblin, it would be sacrilege not to. Your faction determines which races you can play, and your race determines your available classes. Warhammer Online does something that most modern MMOs have shied away from. Each race gets their own unique class types. If you're playing a dwarf, you're not going to be swinging around magic as a wizard, you'll be a rune priest, healing your allies with ancient stove-carved magic. Play as a greenskin, and you can become a black orc, a hulking monster with a bad attitude and a penchant for smashing skulls. It's all very thematic, very in keeping with the Warhammer Fantasy lore, and frankly, a breath of fresh air compared to some of the cookie cutter classes in some newer games. Is the character creation the most detailed thing in the world? No, not by a long shot. If you're coming here expecting to craft the perfect virtual avatar, complete with 12 layers of eyeshadow and realistic beard physics, you're in the wrong place. But you know what? You can be a goblin with some rather provocative hip movement, so that's a win for me. Once you've settled on your class and faction, you're dropped into one of the several faction-specific starting zones. And this is where the game begins to feel both very familiar and, at the same time, oddly different. You'll start by picking up quests from NPCs, slaying the local wildlife, gathering an assortment of items, the usual stuff. If you've played any MMO in the last 15 years, you'll know the drill. But here's where things get interesting. Warhammer Online introduces you to its public quest system fairly early on. Now, public quests aren't exactly revolutionary these days. Most MMOs have some sort of dynamic world events, but back in 2008, this was a big deal. Public quests are large-scale, multi-stage events that happen in the open world, and anyone who shows up can jump in and help out. The more you contribute, the better your rewards. A certain number of enemies, then you might need to defend an area from waves of attackers, and finally there's usually a big boss that you and your newfound friends will need to take down together. The whole system is designed to encourage cooperation, and even though you might not be actively grouped with the other players, you'll feel like you're part of a larger, ongoing battle. At the end of the public quest, the game rolls dice for everyone who participated, and the higher your contribution, the better chance you have at winning the loot roll. But even if you don't win the top prize, you still walk away with something, so you know, no hard feelings. The combat is going to feel very familiar if you've ever played a tab target MMO before. You lock onto an enemy, you hit your abilities in sequence, and you watch the damage numbers fly. Now, let's talk about the real reason you're playing Warhammer Online. The RVR combat. This isn't just PvP, it's war. While you can certainly spend your time questing, grinding, and exploring the world, the game is at its best when you're taking part in the massive faction battles that define the experience. At any point in the game, you can queue for scenarios, which are instance PvP battles where teams of players fight over objectives. Think World of Warcraft's Battlegrounds, but with a heavier focus on faction control. Winning these scenarios earns you renown, a separate PvP progression system that rewards you with new gear and abilities. As you level up, you'll start to find yourself wandering into contested areas where order and destruction are constantly fighting for control. Capturing objectives, holding keeps, and engaging in large-scale siege warfare, it's all part of the experience. And trust me, there's nothing quite like rolling up to a massive keep under siege and seeing hundreds of players on both sides, siege engines firing, and the sound of battle filling the air. These RVR zones are the beating heart of the game, and they offer a level of scale and intensity that you don't see in many MMOs anymore. Even if you're not a hardcore PvP player, there's something thrilling about being part of a massive battle, knowing that your contribution, however small, could tip the balance in your faction's favour. And here's the beauty, you can start participating in PvP from level 1. There's no need to grind out dozens of levels before you can get into the action. You'll be automatically bolstered to the appropriate level of each zone, meaning you can jump straight into the fray without feeling completely useless. One of the things that sets this game apart from the traditional MMO grind is that you can literally level through these PvP activities. So there's no need to run around gathering tusks or fighting off random bandits if you don't want to. You can dive straight into scenarios or the open world RVR zones and earn experience just by smashing your enemies' faces in. It's refreshing, honestly. In most MMOs, PvP is something you dabble in after you've slogged through endless PvE content. It's the endgame activity, a reward for surviving the leveling grind. But not here, the PvP is the game, and you're encouraged to jump into the fray from the very beginning. That means that as you fight in the RVR battles, not only are you gaining experience, but you're also leveling up your renown rank, which unlocks better gear and additional abilities. The more you participate, the stronger you become, and the more you can contribute to your faction's war effort. It's an endlessly satisfying loop that keeps you coming back for more. But the progression isn't just limited to PvP. If you're the type of player who prefers to mix things up with a bit of PvE content, there are plenty of dungeons to explore and public quests to complete. The game doesn't force you down one specific path, but it does reward you for participating in the ongoing war between order and destruction. It's the kind of systems that modern MMOs seem to have forgotten about. An MMO where your actions, both big and small, contribute to the greater conflict. The fact that Return of Reckoning even exists is a testament to the passion and dedication of the Warhammer Online fanbase. This isn't just a group of players hanging on for dear life trying to squeeze out a few more years of a dying game. No, this is a thriving, active community that is constantly growing and evolving, despite the game being over a decade old. When you log in, you'll immediately notice the difference. There's a sense of camaraderie that you don't often find in modern MMOs. Players are genuinely helpful. Need to know how to find a specific dungeon or where to get the best gear? Just ask in chat and you'll have a dozen players ready to guide you. It's like stepping back in time to the early days of MMOs, where the social aspect was just as important as the gameplay itself. And the team behind it all? Well, they deserve a special mention. These aren't just hobbyists, they're dedicated developers working tirelessly to improve the game. They've added new content, attempted to balance classes, and even introduced features that the original developers never had the chance to implement. And they're doing it all without charging a single penny. There are no cash shops, no sneaky microtransactions, no pay-to-win nonsense. It's just you, the game, and the community working together to keep the spirit of Warhammer alive. So why should you give Return of Reckoning a try? Well, if you're tired of modern MMOs that feel more like a storefront than a game, or if you're looking for a community-driven experience that values player interaction over cash shop transactions, or if you want to be part of an ongoing, large-scale war that actually feels meaningful, then Return of Reckoning might be for you. It's not a game that's going to spoon-feed you with content and achievements just for logging in, but if you're willing to put in the time, you'll find an experience that's deeply rewarding, with a community that's more than happy to welcome you into the fold. If this dive into Warhammer Online sparked your curiosity or brought back some fond memories, don't forget to drop a like. It pains me to say it, but it helps tremendously. Until next time, stay safe and I'll see you on the battlefield.